After working in community services for a decade, wanted more flexible work to spend time with your kids as they grew up. In 2018, started a side hustle after researching many different types of businesses to buy, start, or even own a franchise. Your Gutter Guard business peaked at around $500,000 a year Aussie, with 40% net profit margin. Now, top line has dropped a little as interest rates have risen. You did everything yourself for the first 18 months, then started writing SOPs, standard operating procedures, and delegating to subcontractors and a part-time VA offshore. 6 months ago, sold half of the business, and you now work 2 hours a week on the business, pretty much just in marketing. Now looking to roll the model out across Australia, not as a franchise, but for others wanting to own their own Gutter Guard business with the admin, customer service, and marketing all taken care of. Mate, congratulations on the growth. That was phenomenal.
I think every small business owner, they just need a vision of what they want their business to look like, what they want to get out of it, what they want it to offer. And that's going to be different for everyone.
G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm interviewing a friend of mine, John Ferguson from Hobart Gutter Guard Co, based here in beautiful Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. Thanks for your time today, John.
No trouble at all, Troy. Happy to have a chat.
It's taken me a while to wrangle you to get you on here.
Yeah, it has.
Let's start with how we know each other. We were just chatting about this. So about 2.5 years ago, our mutual friend Steve McCullough introduced you to the monthly business meetups we host here in Hobart and every 2 months in Launceston. You've been coming along pretty regularly to those and getting a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, they've been great. Look, met some great people there, and it's always good for a catch up with other business owners. And had some great guests and attendees. So it's been a good couple of years.
And also, we know each other through the mixed social basketball team that we play in on Sundays when our knees are holding up, and confuse the fuck out of our teammates because we do look fairly similar. So sometimes I'll pass to the wrong person if we're wearing similar coloured clothes.
Yeah, exactly. There are some similarities probably with the lack of hair, I'd say.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so look, business is a local gutter guard business. So it's a home, falls under the home-based service model, where literally we just provide local Tasmanians with a gutter guard solution for their gutters. So it helps protect their gutters from birds is a big issue in Tasmania. So a lot of birds get in the gutters and nest in the roofs. And then leaf protection, so leaf guard is the common term. And then we also provide an ember solution. So we do that with some councils for their properties, and then new builds as well, which need to comply. So that's for fire embers. It solves a few solutions, and then some gutter cleaning and solar panel cleaning. Yeah.
Yeah, no, obviously here in Australia, it's the most dangerous continent on the planet, apparently. All the snakes and crocodiles and drop bears, sharks, and bushfires are a really bad thing. So obviously that's the ember, and the gutter guard obviously helps reduce the risk around that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's obviously a person's home and the protection of their home is pretty paramount. And a lot of people opt to go with the product just for that solution, really.
How did you start out?
It was a bit of a probably indifferent start out. I was working actually in community services, which I'd been doing for roughly 10 years. And I got to a point where I was having young kids come along, and I just wanted to, find that thing where I could still be pretty involved in my boys' lives, be there to pick them up at school and go to all their activities and have weekends with them. That's when I started searching for potential businesses for sale. So I did the typical seek, all the business websites, and which led me to the franchise system because most Seek and business websites are overloaded with franchises for sale. So I thought, oh, cool, they must be good. So I went down that path. I didn't buy into anything, but I did about years of diligence. I actually came across a franchise called Gutter Night and inquired into that and was in the process with those guys for about 3 months. And yeah, there was a big franchise startup fee, ongoing franchise fees, and a few restrictions, which, yeah, for the right person is good. For some people need that. And, they need that hand to help them along the journey and get them started. But I sort of found, I felt I could probably avoid going down that path and start something myself. And I could see there was a bit of a gap in the market in Tassie, and and that's when I thought, look, let's just do this myself. So I did it on the side of working for the first 18 months. So unfortunately, it did take up a few weekends at that stage and a few late nights. But that was when the kids were in bed. So and grew from there and turned it into a pretty successful local Tassie business.
And for the international audience, Seek is the biggest job board platform here in Australia. And fun fact, you wouldn't know this, John, but Seek Commercial, which is the business side of things, as you said, people want to sell their business, they can list it there. I was actually involved in designing that. We were the first external people but Seek brought in to help design the screen, the flow, the layout, etc. Our web company in Melbourne. Yeah, that was 20 years ago, and I certainly had more hair back then.
I hope you got a bit of an equity stake.
Oh, weird.
You'd be doing pretty well.
Yeah. And so what year did you start Gutter Guard, and how old were you?
Yeah, so, how old was I? Jeez. So it started in 2018. So what are we, 7 years? So that make me 36. So yeah, it's a bit of a late bloomer, sort of. But so about seven or 8 years it's been running. Yeah.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah, certainly. Look, numbers wise, it's initially year one, we were sort of looking at 60K. I ended up turning over in the first year because I was doing a lot of the grunt work myself. There's a lot of sweat labor and sweat equity involved in those days. So it was about a 50% margin. And I guess for the first 12 months, I sort of thought, this is pretty good. There's something here. And walking away with about $30,000 net profit at the end of the first year was good. But since then, year two, we sat at around 120,000 turnover, and then a 40% margin on that. I started to introduce contractors into the model then, because I knew I needed to make this grow better, I had to get off the tools. So I started training up some local contractors to install Gutter Guard and do the cleaning. Went through some interesting characters doing that, some local Tasmanians. But in the end, found some really good ones, and they're still with me today. So some of those guys have been with the business now for 6 years, and they're still turning up every week, which is good. I guess from year 3 to year 6, we've sat at around the 400 to 500K mark. During the low interest period, it was really, really good. A lot of people, the conversions were about 70%, so 70 to 80% back then. I think our best year was about 500K, and that was a 40% margin. So that was a pretty good year just for something that was a side hustle. And sort of sitting at about the 350 to 400K mark now. Interest rates have sort of gone back up, to their averages, and you sort of find that has a bit of an impact on people's decisions financially. Yeah,
and still making a decent profit on that now.
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's it's a lifestyle business, and that's what I was after at that stage. It was purely lifestyle for me, and the profit margins have always been pretty good. But it was more like, can I control my time and just have a business where I can sort of spend time with family, and that was the sole purpose, just a lifestyle business, which it was. Yeah.
Yeah, you told me just before we hit record, maybe mention to the audience how many hours a week now you're working on that business.
Yeah, well, look, when since in the last 6 months, I did sell a 50% stake in the business. And before that, just for some context, after about the first 2 years, um, I was solely operations. I'd moved off the tools completely. And I was probably doing about 25 hours a week at that stage. And then as I sort of had a bit more time to work on the business, because I was sort of doing operational tasks, quoting and managing the technicians and the customers and booking in jobs. I sort of had a bit of time to work on the business, and that led me to a few things. One was a virtual assistant. So I brought in a virtual assistant. Before I brought her in, I created a lot of SOPs, systems and processes, and how-to videos. And I literally onboarded her to take over the quoting side of things, booking and job scheduling. That took, it took a little while to get that set up, but once it was set up and running, and it's been pretty smooth ever since, that probably took away 15 hours a week. So I went from 25 to 10 hours, just bringing in a BA and, paying her. To start with, it was $8 an hour, and then I upped it to $10 an hour.
It's Aussie, not US.
Aussie dollars, yeah. So which is over in the Philippines, that's a pretty good wage. So that got me down to about 10 hours a week. And then I came across some software. I started investing in different software platforms, CRMs, and just platforms for communication and social media management. And I found I sort of had 3 or 4 different software platforms, and Zapier. I was integrating everything with Zapier, and so I sort of went from 10 hours a week on the business to probably 15 hours a week trying to work out all this tech and this tech stack and building it up, and it became a real headache. And I'm like, there's got to be something better than this, which led me to an all-in-one solution, and that's what's still in the business now. So when I was operating, I got the all-in-one sort of software up into the business, I went back to probably 5 to 10 hours a week. And that's where I sort of averaged for the next couple of years. Today, all I do now, after selling a 50% stake in the business, my goal was to make it saleable as well. So I put in all the SOPs and systems and processes, along with the software and BAs in the team. So now I'm doing probably 2 hours of work on the business just for SEO and some ads management. And
that's great. And because you're definitely making over 6 figures profit still for, you're on half that now, but that's for 2 hours a week. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's obviously, if the profit was a lot higher, it'd be mind blowing that how you could do that with business. And it's really opened my mind up into the next phase of my sort of business life as what's possible, and the value you can bring to someone. So, obviously my value now in the business is my ability to bring in leads, the IP I created, and the new partner's taken over the full operations of the business. And he's, because of the way everything's been structured in the business, he's literally doing about 10 hours a week.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. We'll come to the expansion piece soon. I just want to mention, when you first told me about your business, obviously when you and I would catch up either at the meetups or catch up for a drink, obviously we just nerd on about business the whole time. Which is so cool. I thought this is genius what you did in your business when you brought the VA in. So you obviously did everything from the start, and you slowly delegated stuff with SOPs, etc. But you got your VA, you wrote a procedure on how to, if a quote comes in, she handles most of them. You don't even see them these days. And you don't need to go out on site because she'll measure it up online using outlining the roof from Google Maps, etc., and send the quotes out and pretty quickly. I thought that was genius.
Yeah, that's exactly pretty much how it works. And look, it's sort of, that's something you can only do with this type of business. It would be, if this was an electrical business or a building company, it wouldn't be that streamlined and that easy. Obviously, you could still bring a BA and have them take over certain tasks, but literally with this business, because of technology and Google Earth, and there are apps out there like Roofer, you can get all the street views, so you can get a look at the ground level, you can get a look at the height of the roof, you can get the pitch of the roof, all online, and you can get the dimensions. So you can literally use a measuring tool. And so I did all that myself, put it all into how-to videos, processes, and just step-by-step guides, and then onboarded her, and that's what she does now. So literally, with the software we've got funnels in place. So a lead comes in through a funnel, and then it qualifies them, gets all their details. So we have all the information we need for my VA to literally do a quote, prepare a quote, send the quote off to them through our software. So everything's done through the software. It's got two-way communication channels and built into it. So all the messaging is all set up with templates. So she just literally chooses the templates, embeds it into the message, and sends it for each process of the sale or the quote. And then there's a follow-up process as well. So we're literally getting a quote to a customer within, I'd say 90% of our quotes are received by the customer within 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, it's really good.
Well, you've heard me mention before that Harvard review or study that shows if you if you call a lead within an hour of them calling or making contact, if they, the lead comes in, calling within the hour, conversion increases by 367%. So it's hugely important.
Yeah, that's crazy. And look, that's a big gap in the trade industry, as most people who have tried to get tradies out, I'm sure can relate to. There is a big gap there, and there's a big market for people who want to go down that path and set up these types of systems and workflows and stuff in their business, especially the trade business. There's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah. And no full-time equivalents you started with and where you're at now. So you started part-time, and roughly how many, including contractors, would you have now?
Yeah. So look, today we've got our VA, so part-time VA. We've got 3 contractors on the books who regularly do work for us. And look, we've got another casual contractor as well, but he's sort of not used as much. But the 3 contractors are used pretty regularly. And then obviously the 2 partners with their involvement. So Mitchell, who's roughly 10 hours a week, and then myself. Yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Yeah, I guess the biggest success point was when probably the day I handed in my resignation while I was building the business on the side. That was a pretty significant moment. There's obviously lots of different things that define success for people, and it's pretty personal. But for that, it was just a reassurance that, wow, I sort of can do this. I can create something and add value to the market, and still have time, the time freedom that was important to me for my family. So that was a defining moment, and probably I guess for me that's success, just having control of your time and creating value.
So that answers the next question. What does success look like to you?
This is being a good dad as well, obviously. For all the parents.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this is a great question for you, because this is the other thing that really impressed me about your business was obviously starting out doing everything and then slowly documenting SOPs and then delegating. And really now, in the last few years, the bulk of your time in this business, or you could call it on this business really, is just around the marketing, the lead generation, as you said before. So, and you know this question very well because you're an avid listener.
Yeah.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Yeah, look, it is pretty good. They're pretty important part of business for me. I think marketing and sales is probably the most important part of the business. Obviously, you need to provide a good service and all those things and be good at what you do. But the number one thing I recommend is just to develop a really sound marketing and sales process, putting in a funnel and a system, and then having a sales conversion process. I just found that when I implemented that into my business, the conversion rate increased dramatically, just because it was all systemized. It was all, yes, that lead management side of the equation was just really fine tuned, and you sort of found that the customer satisfaction just went through the roof by implementing that. So putting those things in place is probably the most important thing for a small business, a local business, and then as they evolve, obviously, into a bigger business.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yes, I would. I think there's a big opportunity in the trades and home services industries. Obviously, the demographics are shifting and have been shifting for a while. People generally aren't as handy and hands-on as they used to be. Most of the time, dads were getting out and cleaning the gutters, and if there was any handiwork, they were doing it. But I've sort of found there is a generational shift, and there's ample opportunity in that space. Whether you want a side hustle, or you want a lifestyle business, or you actually want to grow a really big business, there's plenty of opportunity in the space. I think for the people who are happy to have a non-sexy business, there that opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, look, most stressful points. There's been a lot of stressful moments, and look, a lot of times when I was really, really ready to throw in the towel. A lot of frustrations, but I think, look, the most stressful part was actually the very first job I actually completed. I'd never worked on roofs. I wasn't a tradie. I didn't have a background in that stuff, but I was willing to give it a crack and learn. But the first job was a 3-story house. It was a tile roof. So there's ColourBond roofs, which are metal and quite easy to work on. And then there's tile roofs, which are very hard to work on and hard to do the installation, which I didn't know at the time because I was learning. I did have some support from a person on the mainland, a supplier who I'd built a relationship with, and they were able to help me and give me tips and stuff, but no one on the ground helping. So that job was probably the most stressful part, and it was the actual very beginning of the business. And my wife even said to me, like, "What are you doing?" I was going there after work. Fortunately, it was during daylight savings, so it wasn't getting dark till 8 o'clock. So I was finishing my job at 3, going there, doing the install with a friend who's a builder. Thankfully, I had him. Otherwise, yeah, it would have been a disaster. And then going on the weekend. So that first job, there was a lot of safety stress, a few dodgy moments. The weather was terrible, and it took about 6 or 7 days. And today, that job probably just had 2 days. So yes, it was very stressful.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Look, I think the areas to add the most value are definitely Facebook, SEO, and Google Ads. To begin with, I bring people in to do that. I outsourced it. And while I was doing that, I was also learning on the side. I just knew it had to be put in place. So I sort of was doing courses, online courses as well, and learning it all myself and implementing it as I went along, but also sort of seeing what the consultants were doing at the same time. And eventually I took over all that myself. And so I didn't need the consultants doing it anymore for me. And for this type of business, that was pretty good, being able to do that myself, because I soon found out that once you have everything in place and you really know your market and your niche and your product and service, and you can put in really good marketing and sales copy and strategies, you can sort of do it like I do now in a couple of hours a week. And and that expense initially was pretty high. Most marketing companies and agencies, they charge a bit to do all that. So yeah, that was probably I'd say the most important.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
In this business, it's probably having a reliance on contractors and weather. Uh, weather has a pretty big influence in the business because everything's done from a roof. So if the weather's a little bit wet, or jobs can be delayed, stuff like that, and can get a bit frustrating for the customer experience and for the contractors as well. If they're going out to jobs and then they can't finish it. So probably that reliance is probably I'd say the stuff I've enjoyed the least in this business.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Just stuff we touched on before. Definitely the freedom it has provided for myself and my family. As I mentioned, picking up the boys from school most days, going to all their activities, and just having that control around time. Initially, obviously, I've been able to get more time as the business has grown, and I've evolved with it. But initially, it was still having that control. Go, right, cool. This task can wait till tomorrow. Today, I'll be doing this with the kids and picking them up, and going to their athletics camp, stuff like that. Yeah.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Look, I'd say just having a mindset of, no matter what happens, there's always a way forward. I think sometimes it's easy to give up on yourself and throw in the towel and things get too hard. But I think having that mindset of, you can do this, and that belief, and it might take that first, that first 3 months of grit, and then all of a sudden something just clicks in the business, and it can just propel you and change your mind shift, and I'd say, and just probably just challenging yourself, and putting little goals in place, and working on ways to grow as a business owner, and as a person. I think, yeah.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Look, I think a vision. I think every small business owner, they just need a vision of what they want their business to look like, what they want to get out of it, what they want it to offer, and that's going to be different for everyone. And I think if you can outline tasks probably on a weekly basis, and I found for me it worked really well. As soon as something popped in my head, I just put it down as a task on the Google Tasks app, and it would just be sitting there, and I'd know it had to be ticked off. And then so the next day, if there was something that was super important, like the software and implementing that and learning it, I just had that task and ticked it off. I think that, combined with a vision for your business and what you want to get out of it, is probably two of the more important habits.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its number one growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, certainly. Look, from an early stage in the business, I had a pretty strong vision of getting off the tools and stepping out of the operations, and focusing on those activities that move the needle in business. And as most people know, people management, it's pretty challenging. We all have different personalities, and if I felt someone was the right fit, I moved with them pretty quickly. And I just had that innate sense that this person is going to align with my values and providing good service to the customers. And I just found, if you were a little bit more diligent with that, and slow to hire the right people and quick to fire the wrong people, it definitely helps in your business. I think from the beginning, I knew it was important, as I said, to bring these people in nice and early and get them trained up, get off the tools, and that's what I did. So there were some challenges. There's always some challenges with people management and bringing people into the business. But I found you just, that's part of business. So you've just got to deal with it and move on. And if they're the wrong person, you got to let them go.
You would have heard me say a few times on the podcast that old text and saying the definition of conflict is two people in the same county.
Yes. Yep. I have heard it. I've listened to most of your podcasts, Troy. So.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
There's a lot of things. I think most importantly, it's just giving yourself permission to fail and giving your workers permission to fail. I sort of found when I was an employee and an employee at Telstra for a while there, which wasn't great, but there was a lot of micromanagement and there wasn't much permission to fail. And I sort of knew that getting a business and growing it and bringing people in, I encouraged people to fail. And in the beginning, people was the contractors and, the BAs, they were all relying on me a lot, quite heavily, and calling me just for permission. And I sort of worked that out pretty quick, that they sort of knew what to do, but they just wanted permission to do it. And so, I advise them that it's okay to fail. If you do, look, it's just a mistake. We learn from it. From that point on, I found that I was getting a lot less calls and a lot less WhatsApp messages, and the guys were okay. And look, the failure rate was pretty low. So,
yeah. Tell it when it's how you've handled balance. It sounds like, well, firstly, you had it front of mind from day one, and now you've nailed it.
Yeah. Look, I have, and that was the goal of the business. And I know that's, there's businesses out there which you can't get that balance. And if you're a founder and you've got a company that's growing, 200+% a year on year, then that balance is probably not going to exist. So for me, though, it was a lifestyle business, and I knew it was a niche market and a niche business. And I knew that once I had everything in place and had got through that hard 12 to 18 months, that the balance was going to be there. And that was my goal. But look, I know that that's not for everyone, and it's not possible with a lot of businesses out there. Yeah, but that balance there exists for me. So,
how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Probably professional development in terms of self-learning.
Yeah.
There's been like hundreds of hours of podcasts and YouTube and audio books. It's thousands of hours, I'd say, when I think about it. I'm just one of those people, probably like yourself, that I'm always sort of listening to something or learning something. And then you have the phases where you do your deep work and the tasks and activities where you've got to tick off. But outside, once they're done, for me, I'm sort of an avid learner and an avid listener. So there's been a lot of personal development through courses and personal education. Outside of that, professional development, where I've engaged in consultants and stuff. Look, there has been a small amount, but I sort of found it wasn't something I required ongoing. It was sort of like, cool, I need someone in. I'll bring someone in to help with this part of the business, and that might have been 3 months, and then that was it. And that was probably more around the software side of things and some of the sales activities and systems and funnels. But moving forward, if I do continue down the entrepreneur path, I think it's highly important to have that business coach on your side, especially with companies that are going to grow and you're going to bring in lots of employees and stuff like that. I think it's a non-negotiable.
Yep. And back on professional development, I do 13 hours a week on 1.5 or 2 speed as I'm driving around town, or like today, I'm going to the tip, or shoot meets in the sun, which is what I'm going to do before we finish recording this.
Yep.
So I can steal the ball from you more often on the court.
Yeah, and I'll try and take it a little bit easy on you as well.
Well, I can't shoot threes anymore since I did my Achilles. So on the same side, that's why I just always pass it to you when you're out in the perimeter. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so you've had consultants or coaches. Have you had mentors along the way?
Look, I haven't had any mentors or as such that I've paid for. Look, so probably with the business I had, I wasn't in a position to bring in, a mentor and a coach. The turnover and that isn't there for that, and it sort of doesn't require it either. But look, I joined the business networks, as you know, and I found the people there I'd lean on, and yourself, obviously, I'd lean on for tips and just things to chat about. So that's I found just having those people in your network was probably sufficient for my mentorship. Yeah.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
No, we don't. Sort of, once again, it's probably not that business. It's not a big enough business to sort of bring on board of directors and advisors. At the moment, I'm the advisor for Mitchell, the business partner. So, yeah, like I work with him on strategy as well and some advice.
Yep. Now, you're one of the few I've had on, John, that's exited, and I think you're the only one that's partially exited. So you've sold off half the business recently, pretty much out of the business operationally. You spend 2 hours a week nerding up on marketing, which you enjoy. So maybe talk about any advice for those thinking of exiting one day, and then maybe we'll talk, I guess, one of the reasons why you decided to sell off half the business, which is the next chapter, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Look, in terms of advice for exiting your business, the strongest bit of advice I could give, and in my opinion, I think it's the most important, is from day one, have a system to set up your systems and processes and step-by-step guides and how-to videos. I think when you're selling a business and when you go through that stage of the sale process, that depending on the business, that could be a lengthy process, and it'll be more lengthy if you don't have systems, processes. Because a new business owner is going to want to come in. They, obviously, as you know, they're going to be like, okay, so when you leave this business, how long is it going to take for me to take over? And if that's not in place, you're going to get a lower sales price, obviously, and it's going to be a lot harder in that transition, and it probably will need to be done at some stage. So, yeah, the biggest tip is just from day one, whether it's just a Google Drive and Google Docs, just put step-by-step guides, and that can evolve and become more sophisticated as you grow, and you can bring, the business is big enough, you can bring in people to do that for you, and you can even have software. There's different tools out there which really make that process a lot easier and a lot easier to access. And bring in the VA as well and my partner, because I did place a heavy emphasis on that and started to do it pretty early. It was pretty easy to train up a VA just by giving her all the how-to docs and how-to videos, and which I just built while I was doing it, all the activities. And then Mitchell, the partner, it took about a month to onboard him, and that was part-time. Whereas, if that's not in place, I imagine it would have taken 6 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. And maybe run through the next chapter, the big reason why you decided to sell off half the business now.
Yeah, look, the next chapter for my business is it's sort of a growth chapter and an expansion chapter. I think what I've built, it's like a franchise. Like, there's the potential to franchise the business, but I don't want to go down the franchising path. I want to give people who come in more control over the business and not have renewal fees for them and stuff like that comes with a franchise. I want them to be a full owner. So, yeah, the next phase of the business is expansion around Australia-wide, mainly capital cities. Canberra is a good one, Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, the Gold Coast. Probably they're the areas we're going to target. And so the model is an 80-20 split in ownership. So basically, if someone comes in, I'll set them up with the business, exactly what I've done, and build everything out for them, all the systems and processes and software and funnels and everything that streamlined my business, so that they can just hit the ground running, and then it's ongoing support. So that's the next the next goal with the business. I think it's set up to do that, being such a niche type of business, and it just offers, other people like myself that opportunity to create a good lifestyle business. If people are after, want that sort of lifestyle opportunity where they can have a bit more control and freedom and still make a good income and not work 50 hours a week, then, I think it's there for them. Yeah.
And to be clear, that they own 80%, you're saying you own 20%, but
sorry. The model is 50-50 ownership and then 80-20 split on profit. So, so at the end of the financial year, the profits just split 80-20, but it's a 50-50 ownership model.
Yeah.
That was what I actually did, engage in the service of an advisor for that, and the best way to sort of offer that model. And that's what we came up with.
Yeah, because I remember we were talking about it about a month ago at the last meetup over a beer, yourself, Brad and I.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear you're steering away from the franchise path, because Australia is actually the most franchised nation in the world.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of horror stories, a shit ton of set up illegals.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention over the beer is one you may want to look into, talk to your accountant, but whether you're going to get hit with payroll tax if you do grow this, say you got 20 companies in the group.
Yeah.
Just want to check your percentage shareholding if that doesn't trigger payroll tax to say it's a group, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. No, that's something I will need to look into. And look, I've sort of got the offer in place and some of all the paperwork and the website and everything in place. And I definitely need to probably work out more of the accounting side of it, stuff like that, and the tax side of it. But look, I'll literally be doing what I do with the Hobart-based business. It'll just be the same, except people who come on board on the mainland will be getting 80% of the profit instead of 50%.
Yeah. And obviously you'll be focusing on the marketing. You got your customer service team and the admin, etc. So they can just focus on billable work. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great, brilliant model.
Yeah. You will see. Let's hope so.
All right, John, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think's the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Look, I think the hardest thing in a small business is just that sort of solopreneur side of it. There is a bit of isolation at times. You're working by yourself, especially if you're working on ad copy and sales copy and marketing and different ads and SEO stuff. You are pretty isolated.